Well, thank you very much, everybody. It's always a bit of a challenging job to be a policymaker, policy guy, trying to discuss policy just before drinks, the end of the afternoon. So I hope I will be able not to bore you too much and be able to give you some insights in what we're doing. Actually, we have two firsts. I have two firsts for you today. We have the National Cybersecurity Agenda, which went to Parliament on the 20th of April. But actually, this is the first big conference. We'll be discussing it. And yesterday, we had the National Cybersecurity Assessment of this year out. You all probably read that in the media. And also the first time for us to discuss that in public a bit more. So probably these things you all know. We're not in Kansas anymore. There's a lot of things going on. We see ransomware, Europol. We saw DDoS attacks on the banks in 2013, actually a couple of weeks ago also. And we all know that the DDoS attacks increase in terms of intensity. We saw the film The Interview, which is quite interesting in hindsight, looking at Singapore events a couple of days ago. Belgacom incident in which Belgacom had to really sort of reinvest in their whole IT. The OPM hack in the USA, which a lot of personnel data was being stolen, and for everyone who is having a sort of a second secret romantic life, that wasn't so secret anymore when Ashley Madison got hacked. We saw the Maersk in the Rotterdam harbor, which was 203 to 300 million euros of damage last May. Stuxnet, of course, is familiar for a lot of you. TV5 Le Monde, which seemed to be on the first view sort of a terrorist attack, but was allegedly not from jihadist terrorists. Saudi Aramco took them 4 months to get their IT up and running. Well, a lot of incidents, and there are a lot of incidents more. So that's why we yearly make the cybersecurity assessment. And yesterday was time for the cybersecurity assessment of 2018. And there are 5 main findings there. The one is digital threat has become permanent. And I'm preaching to the choir here, I think, because all of you, I think, are in the business of getting that every day with your customers and your partners. But still something we have to take into account. Digital threat is now a normal thing in society. And we see collateral damage in other countries. Actually, the NotPetya attack we faced in the Rotterdam harbor was actually nowhere near targeted at the Rotterdam harbor. It was targeted at Ukraine. And the Rotterdam harbor, the 300 million euros of damage was only collateral damage, but still an enormous amount of money. Well, the cybercrime is persistent. We all see that you don't have to be a great programmer to be a rich cybercriminal anymore. The cybercrime as a service is taking track, and everyone who wants to be a cybercriminal can become a cybercriminal. We face the biggest threat we see is sabotage and disruption by nation states. And the biggest problem for society we think is that the basic measures, and you all see that in your practice as well, I think, too often some basic measures are missing. And that's really a concern for all of us, for the Netherlands, and also for Europe and global. I was told that we had a really big stage, so I took some really small letters, but I think they're too small. But I'm going to try to give some insight in this nice sheet. It was taken from the cyber war map, and it was publicized, I think, on the 6th of June, so a couple of weeks ago, by the George Washington University in the USA. And it is a nice diagram of nation-state attacks on advanced persistent threats. and it's found on the internet, and it's based on open source information. So what you can see is what countries do attacks originate from, what campaigns have we been seeing, and what kind of perpetrator groups you can find here. So you see, obviously, the US in the middle. You see North Korea, South Korea as being targeted, and maybe also originator. We see the Estonian attack of 2007, 3 weeks of hideous cyber attacks, obviously DDoS attacks. And we see a lot of countries. We don't see the Netherlands in here as such, so I think that's the good news. But still, it's something we have to take into account as a society. And this is also, I think, a nice picture of that it's going on every day, and there are also new campaigns found every day. So why is this important for us? Well, the Netherlands, small country, but big in digitalization, big in ICT. We are #1 in the world in online banking. 93% of our bank transactions go through the internet, go online. And if you compare that, for instance, to Spain or France, it's somewhere below 50% in those countries. So there's really a big difference. We're the second in the world, after Iceland, I was told, in PC ownership. So we have a very large amount of PC. We obviously have the biggest, one of the biggest internet exchange points in the world. We have fast internet. We're all very happy with that, I think. We also were the third on the internet in the world, after the UK and after the US and the UK. So 95% of our youth uses social media. And these are figures before the whole Facebook discussions in the media, so not really sure. But if you add it all up, we're #4 in Europe as it comes to internet shopping. So we have a lot to lose in terms of cybersecurity. We have to do well. And our politicians, and we were very happy with that, saw that as well. So in the last coalition agreement, they decided to really invest much more money in cybersecurity than has been done in the recent years. So, well, you see on the left, Mr. Grapperhaus, our minister, obviously, and Prime Minister Rutte. And the total amount of money which is being spent by government in the next 4 years adds up to about 280 million. And after that, it will be 95 million structural money per year, euros, invested by government in better cybersecurity. And that's throughout the entire of the central government. So it's extra money for defense, extra money for cybercrime, extra money for police, extra money for intelligence services, extra money for the National Cybersecurity Center, extra money for the complete family of cybersecurity people inside government. And actually, if you imagine that the years before we didn't get really that much extra money for cybersecurity, it was all being done within the existing budgets, then the 280 is really a big step forward for the Netherlands. So we hope that it will lead to a really next level of maturity also inside government and also in the government partnerships we have and will be evolving in the next coming years. The coalition agreement also said we're going to write up a national cybersecurity agenda. And if you're a policy person like I am, you're really happy with that. And if you're a person sitting here in the audience, you maybe think, well, what are we going to do? Well, this is actually the third national cybersecurity strategy. We now call it agenda, because the coalition agreement said agenda, but also because the character is a bit different. What remains is the central vision of the second national cybersecurity strategy, and that is the triangle which is on the left that says we have to make sure that we do cybersecurity in the context of economic and societal growth and in the context of freedoms. So it's not only about cybersecurity, it's about balancing out cybersecurity with economy, with freedom. But we have to do a bit better in that. Well, and obviously it's also about cooperation. It is about cooperation between government, between private sector, and between citizens, individuals, which is the core of the Dutch approach on cybersecurity, and I think in which we are, compared to other countries, quite good. So what does that do? It has 7 ambitions, the National Cybersecurity Agenda. And within those ambitions, there is room and space for measures we already thought about, but also measures in the future we didn't think about, but we can put under those. It is about investing in knowledge. We have to make sure that the awareness of the end users is being transformed into secure behavior. And that's, I think, a challenge for the coming years. And we saw as a government that there are a number of different campaigns going on which relate to cybersecurity. And the next coming years, we're going to connect those and make more impact in that sense. In terms of knowledge, it's also important that we have good universities, good university research, good education. So there's also plans to step up that game in terms of investing in universities and in education. And not only in education on the higher level, but also in the basic education. There's now, and the thing there is, and I think that's sort of a thing that goes through the agenda, is the concept of mainstreaming. So it's not only about we from the Ministry of Justice and Security doing things in cybersecurity, but also getting the cybersecurity word inside all the other policies of colleagues in other ministries. So the Ministry of Education, for instance, is working on to increase the digital skills of youngsters from really young age. What we try to do is get into the digital skills. Action plans also get cybersecurity in there, so we can get it from the ground up. Also long-term investment, but eventually it will help us. Second is public-private alliance. As I said, the first strategy we made was actually more about setting up some infrastructures, getting awareness in society, getting awareness inside government. The second strategy was more about setting up the cooperation, getting sort of engagement with private sector, getting us with each other to talk to each other. And the next step will be in this agenda, the public-private alliance. And that will be not about talking, that will be about doing. We have to make sure that we can get to the next level in cooperation with each other. We have to make sure that we actually pick up a topic and then set all our strengths and all our knowledge together and make sure that we can move on with that. So public-private alliance is a new thing. The third one is strengthening power in cyberspace, and that is about making sure that the quality of information we gather in government is increasing. We can do that by combining it, making sure that the information of the police and of the intelligence services and of the NCSC is brought together, so to get a more enriched picture of what's going on in cyberspace. So it's about quality, but it's also about sharing. Because when you have the information, you have to make sure that it reaches throughout society, all organizations in society. So we're going to set up a nationwide network of cybersecurity organizations for the information sharing. And it has to be about response. We have to make sure that we do our crisis response more engaged, more together on a government level. So that's what we're working on as well. We have the goal of getting international peace and justice in the digital domain. I live in The Hague, and if you live in The Hague, you know it's a city of peace and security and justice, and it has been for a couple of decades, maybe a couple of centuries. And the challenge there is to have the Netherlands also be the capital of the world in international peace and justice in the digital domain, as it is in the physical domain. So there are a lot of initiatives going on, and the Netherlands, being a small country, actually is talking on the world stage, and I will elaborate on that as well. Well, the basis of our cybersecurity problem, obviously, is the fact that our networks and our hardware and software is not secure. Maybe it is secure if it's coming out of the factories, but we find all the time, we obviously find all new vulnerabilities. So we have to make sure that we try to stop that at the source and do a better job in that. And there are some initiatives there as well, going into as well. We have to increase the resilience of critical infrastructure. There was a lot of public-private cooperation with the National Cybersecurity Center and the big corporations in critical infrastructure in sharing information the last couple of years. But the next level is to get a reporting duty and to get really obligatory measures and oversight in that. And that's a European regulation, a European directive that has been implemented in a national law, which is currently in the first chamber of parliament. Cybercrime, very important also to step up our game to make sure that our authorities as government increase along with the cyber criminals so that we can catch them. So that will be the last of our goals. So this together are the ambitions we set up in the National Cybersecurity Agenda. And I would like to pick some more measures that are being set up the coming years. One of those is the nationwide network of cybersecurity partnerships. So what we all heard about the Digital Trust Center. You all know the National Cybersecurity Center. Digital Trust Center has been set up as an organization to help all the other organizations that are not in critical infrastructure, that being the main focus of the NCSC. So the essence is that they are going to partner up in making sure we get information sharing through regional and sectoral cybersecurity organizations, so that we don't get one big government agency where everyone has to go and it's sort of a black hole where all information disappears. No, what we want to do is set up sectoral, regional, public-private or private cybersecurity organizations, partnerships, with which the National Cybersecurity Center can share information and where we can combine the knowledge on a specific sector and make sure that cybersecurity is being dealt with nearby and not from some remote office in The Hague. So there are some good examples of that already. Have been started recently or the last years. We have the CISEC initiative, which is an initiative of the airport of Schiphol. 400 organizations in Schiphol are attached to that, and they're trying to set up a partnership with which in the future the National Cybersecurity Center can cooperate with. We have FERM, that's being set up in the Rotterdam Harbor, and obviously also because of the NotPetya attack. This got a lot of traction in the harbor as well, a lot of money behind it, and that will be the core of knowledge on cybersecurity and harbor. We've got ZCert for the care sector being set up, probably heard about that, specifically aimed at cybersecurity in healthcare. And the Information Security Service, Informatiebeveiligingsdienst, which is already in place for a couple of years now and quite successful in getting the cybersecurity in the different municipalities on a higher level. And we believe that in the next coming years, and we're going to strive to that, this image will grow with new organizations. And we get a whole network in the Netherlands of cooperating organizations with a lot of skills in cybersecurity. Well, the Cybersecurity Alliance, this was sort of a first step of what we could say the usual suspects in cybersecurity. With the launch of a National Cybersecurity Agenda a couple of weeks ago, these organizations already signed up for it, but it's open for a lot more, so this is only the start in that. Then the roadmap for securing hard and software, I think, is a good example. What we're going to do there is take a product lifecycle approach. I'm going to discuss that in a bit further. And it will be about joint responsibility. So it's not the government saying what has to be done, but it's about working together. It's balancing values, balancing public values. Again, a bit more of that in a moment. The portfolio approach, so not going to do certification for all ICT products, but taking specific products and making sure what's necessary. And there are options for a complementary approach. So it's not all about regulation. It can be about self-regulation, it can be about certification, it can be about European regulation. We have to make a sort of a tailor-made approach. I think the essence of this roadmap will be that we give ourselves, as a community, the space to get a sort of a stepping stone approach. We don't have to get it right at once, but we can make a roadmap and say, well, these are the things we're going to do first, and then next year we're going to do that, and then on and on and on, improving the security of hardware and software. Because, well, the internet wasn't built in one day in the magnitude it is right now, but so the root cause solution will take us a couple of years as well. And I think the life cycle approaches there is quite interesting in that. So we have to look at all the stages in this chain of secure hard and software. So it's about testing and certification at the beginning. It is about secure deployment, because we see a lot of things going wrong in configuration. It is about detecting incidents and vulnerability management, patch management in the whole life cycle, and then also looking at things like liability and also at the end of the chain, the legacy problem. So a lot of work is going to be done there in the next coming years. These are a couple of examples of what we're going to do in the national cybersecurity agenda. And then the European agenda, I think. Who knows the GDPR? Wow, that's an easy one. Who knows the NIS directive? Oh, a lot of people, a lot less. NIS directive was effective May the 9th, and a directive, as you know, is a thing that has to be transposed to national law. So in all the 28 member states, there have to be new laws on cybersecurity. And what this law does, we have them in the first chamber of parliament. What this law does is it makes obligatory for operators of essential services, so critical infrastructure organizations, to have appropriate measures for cybersecurity. And then the discussion is, what's appropriate measures? Well, that will be the discussion we'll be having in the next months and probably years. And then there is also oversight in that. So if the oversight bodies we have already in the different sectors will be doing oversight on cybersecurity as well. So the inspectors who already come for safety-related issues will take along the cybersecurity issues as well. And there is a reporting duty to the National Cybersecurity Center, but we already had it in national law from starting this January. We believe this, if implemented right, and that will be a really big challenge for us to do that in cooperation, because regulation, you can do that in a lot of bad ways, and the challenge will be to do it in the right way, to enhance our cooperation and make sure you get visible, good measures in critical infrastructure. Which one of you has heard about the European Cybersecurity Act, cybersecurity package? Still a bit less, yeah. In September of 2017, the European Commission announced a European cyber package, and the core element at this point in time is the European Cybersecurity Act. And so that's a European law, which is, when it's being dealt with in the political arena, it's effective for every country. So it doesn't have to be transposed to national law as it is with a directive. As the GDPR also is a regulation, so it's effective for everyone. And this Cybersecurity Act will actually do a couple of things. It will instate a European-wide certification framework for securing hard and software for cybersecurity. So what we probably are not going to see in the coming years is that there will be coming specific European certifications. But what it will do is that it's sort of a mechanism for getting certification systems out in Europe. So if we have a good system in the Netherlands and this act is effective, we can bring that system to Brussels, and then a council of gentlemen and ladies will look at the system and say, well, this is a good system, then the Netherlands system will be the European system. So that's really important to us, and I think for us in our cooperation, that we make sure that we develop good Netherlands certification systems, because they could be the next European systems. The other thing in the cyber package is a permanent status for ENISA, and ENISA, as you know, is the agency for cybersecurity in Europe, which didn't have a permanent status, so will be really a better, a firmer agency we will be having in Europe to cooperate with. And then on a global scale, so this was the European scale, and then on a global scale, the Netherlands is also quite active. We do it in the UN in terms of discussions on norms, which is a really difficult discussion, because that's, at this point in time, not so easy to align all the countries on how to behave in cyberspace. And we all see the effects of that daily. But still, we have to make sure that we keep on discussing it and keep on taking the time to try to find some form of alignment and try to find some form of global norms of, on cybersecurity. For that, we also, in the Netherlands, set up the Global Commission on the Security of Cyberspace, which is based in The Hague, but the Commission is set up of a lot of politicians from throughout the world, east, west, north, south. And the Global Commission is also thinking about and helping with development of those norms. The Netherlands is active in the Freedom Online Coalition, because as being a free and open country and a democratic country, we also believe that the internet needs to be a free and open place to, and has to remain that. Then we have the Global Forum on Cyber Expertise, which is a capacity building organization worldwide. So what we're going to do there, and what we're doing there actually for the last couple of years, is helping other countries in setting up their cyber capacities, so we can have more mature and more knowledgeable partners throughout the world to share information with. Confidence building is obviously very important. You could say that's something we had in the Cold War as being a hotline between Moscow and Washington, D.C. It's very important to keep on talking also to countries who appear to be adversaries, but still have good contacts, that if there are incidents, if there are cyber conflicts, that things don't get out of hand. And lastly, the discussion is about internet governance in the IGF forums and also in the ITU, Internet Telecommunications Union, which the Netherlands is very active in. But as we are here today, we're talking about cybersecurity. And I see a lot of people wearing t-shirts, and then the suspicion is that you're being technical people. I'm usually quite right with that. But it's not only about techniques anymore. It's not only about info security anymore. It's also about values. I showed you the triangle in which we try, as a vision for the Netherlands, try to balance out the economy, the privacy, and the security. But actually, if you think about that a bit longer, it's more. It's about ethical discussions, and we see that in robotics coming up, in artificial intelligence coming up. We all heard Stephen Hawking say, let's not let the machines take over humanity. We've probably all read the Homo Deus of the Israeli professor, saying that the robots will be the next stage in evolution, and they will take us along as a sort of a herd. So it's human versus computers, but it's also about monopoly versus competitive markets. Do we allow in the world that monopolies exist, as the digitalization, the ICT market, has been sort of a winner-takes-all market? Is that something we would like to see moving forward? And what can we do about that? It's also about legislation. As I said, doing legislation, doing regulation is not easy. It's really hard to get it right. But does that mean we don't have to regulate? Well, we have to make sure we find the right balance between regulation on the one side and a more laissez-faire approach on the other side. It's also about public versus private. What are the things the government has to do? What are the things private sector can do or wants to do? And it's about digital sovereignty versus international cooperation. So it's very important, obviously, in the cybersecurity domain to have an international cooperation. But it is also about digital autonomy for Europe. It is important for us to have our own stuff, our own technical stuff, and for the Netherlands to have a thriving and good cybersecurity community. So this sort of circle will be at the basis of our policy discussions, in making sure that we don't forget anything if we are setting up a policy, making sure that we include all the discussions, all the interests, all the values that are connected to the digital world. So bottom line, and I'm closing off. We think that we have a role to play as the Netherlands as being leading Europe in a value-driven and secure digitalization. So it's not only about innovation, it's not only about getting the fastest products, fastest to market, and getting a swift digitalization. It's about a secure digitalization, but it's also about values. It's also to make sure that we have digitalization that doesn't steal your data or does other adverse things. We have to discuss ethics in cyber domain as well. And we think Europe is the best platform to do that and best positioned to do that in the world, as Europe is a value-driven community. And we think the Netherlands can lead in that. So that's the aim for the next coming years. So what you're going to see, and I already mentioned it, you will be seeing EU-wide certification for hardware and software the coming years. You will be seeing a more resilient critical infrastructure. We will be investing in capacities of government and in knowledge. And we will be giving assistance for all companies in the Netherlands in the coming years. And we also will be seeing a stronger Netherlands towards the perpetrators, if we do it right and if we do it together. Thank you very much.